What's up, people? In this video we're going to do something a little bit different. Let me just clear my screen here so I'm not distracted. In this video I want to tell you a story about why I chose to move to Israel and join the IDF, otherwise known as the Israeli Defense Forces. I've mentioned in many of my videos that I was in the army, I was in the Israeli army. I think you would be able to realize fairly quickly that I'm not from Israel. I'm from the United States, judging by my accent, mannerisms, how I talk. Clearly an American, right? I am a dual citizen, but I've never really told the story on YouTube of how I made the decision to move to Israel and join the army. So that is what this video is going to be about. If you've watched my videos before and you're like, who is this like random guy like making all these like retarded videos? Like, I want to know more about him. I'm going to tell you right now. So before we get into that, I will say I am somewhat biased, right? I do believe that joining the military, the IDF or whatever, was a good choice for me. It was a great experience. I mean, it changed my life in good ways, whereas if I hadn't done it, things probably would not have turned out so good for yours truly. We'll get into that in a moment. So basically, when I was very young, I had a very strong appreciation for the military. Specifically, I wanted to join the Marines. Always wanted to be a Marine. Always wanted to I loved their idea of discipline and just hardcore-ness. And I was like, I want to be a Marine. That's what I wanted to do. It was not up for discussion as far as I was concerned. College, university, had no interest in that at all. However, as you can imagine, parents not too thrilled with that idea. Specifically my mom, got into many screaming matches about what would happen if I went and threats and stuff like that. Nothing against my mom, she's very nice, whatever. When you're a teenager, you're going to have some ideas that conflict with your parents' ideas and you might get into some arguments. This was one of them. So anyway, they wanted me to go to college. Fun fact, I actually didn't go to the Marines, right? Ended up going to the University of Arizona. I did not fill out a single college application, okay, or write a single essay for college. I was like, nope, if you want me to go to college, you can get me in. Go ahead, get me in, pay for it, get the loans, do whatever you gotta do for me to get in, because I'm not doing shit, because I'm not going. So they wrote my essays, they filled out my applications, they signed my name, or my mom specifically, I don't think my dad did it. Got into University of Arizona, and being the arguably weak-willed individual that I was at the time, I decided to go. I was like, all right, well, I can always join the Marines later, right? I was 17 when I went to college. I always thought to myself, I have more time, I don't need to go right this second. Went to university, clearly, or maybe not clearly, but I think I went to all my classes once, on the first day, and then from then on I just stopped going. I didn't turn in one assignment, or maybe I turned in one in one of the classes. Failed every single class, ended up coming back and living with my parents and just kind of getting my life back together, because I was kind of lost, didn't really know what I wanted to do, never really thought of myself as going to college, or I just wanted to join the Marines. I wanted the military lifestyle, I wanted the discipline, I wanted that toughness that I feel I didn't really get growing up. I was kind of a shy kid, and I thought that the military would make me more tough and more confident just about myself in general. And I didn't get that, so I was like, oh, here I am just stuck going to college. Ended up going to community college for 2 years, and while I was there, a lot of my friends, all of my friends really, or most of them, this being Los Angeles in the early 2000s, we all smoked weed, and we all, in order to support our weed smoking habit, we, would sell some weed here and there. And when you sell weed, it's easy to kind of, people, they buy an eighth from you, for example, and they're like, can you get this? Can you get that? Right? They ask you for other things. Can you get Vicodin? Can you get Xanax? Can you get Valium? Can you get mushrooms? Whatever. And so, as over the course of your career as a street pharmacist, let's call it, you meet other people who have access to certain things, and you make deals with them, and maybe you do a little buying and selling in order to supply your customers with what they're asking for. So a few years go by, and I had made enough connections to the point where I don't want to say I could get anything I wanted, but I could get pretty much anything. I never really dealt with people who did coke, no heroin and no crack, and coke not so much, just because it wasn't really my style. I was never I didn't really like to drink. Like, do coke, you're gonna drink, and you're gonna go out a lot. I didn't really go out a lot. It was more like, let's play video games and get high, and maybe pop a Xanax and just chill, right? That was what I did. So eventually I got to the point where I just had a ton of stuff on me really at any time. And eventually I met a kid who went to my high school who was in the rave scene, right? So he's in the rave scene, and I meet up with him because somebody had asked me for some ecstasy, and I had this kid's phone number because we bought weed from his friend. He had really good weed. And I tried E a few times, really liked it, loved how it made me feel. I was completely uninhibited. You feel like yourself, blah, blah, blah. And so I wanted to get some pills from this guy. And he's like, okay, cool. I call him up and I'm like, can I come meet you, whatever? And he's like, yeah, but I'm at a rave downtown, so you have to come downtown. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. Drive downtown. First rave I'd ever been to. I end up buying some pills from him, take a couple pills, stay at the rave, have the time of my life. And from then, it the bug bit me for raving, right? Now they call them now they're festivals, but back in the day, there were fewer festivals. You had what's called a massive, EDC was considered a massive. Monster Massive is a massive, a huge rave. Now they're just festivals, electronic music festivals, right? Whatever, the scene has evolved, apparently. So I started going to raves, and this kid was fairly high up in the dealer rankings. Strangely, he was I knew him from high school. Didn't realize that I knew him, but I knew him. Anyway, so I bought my first pack of pills from this kid and started making real money with the dealing, right? I would find $100 bills, $50 pills in my pocket and not remember how they got there, right? It just got to the point where instead of me having extra money to go see a movie and buy whatever food that I wanted, I had more money than I knew what to do with, right? So anyway, I go through this for a while. My parents end up buying a house where they currently live now in La Quinta. I moved in with my uncle and his family in the valley from the west side, which is where I'm from. And I maintained this type of lifestyle where I was basically go to my friend's house every day, and we just sit around, smoke weed, and serve sacks from his apartment. And things progressed, and I kept going to raves. I started going every weekend. Sometimes I'd go 2 nights in a row, and started getting into some other stuff as well. Got into crystal, right? Started doing meth, right? And as you may or may not know, once you get into that, that's when things start to go bad, right? That's when you start meeting the real degenerates. No offense to any of you who might be watching this, but that's when you start meeting the real career fuck ups, let's call it. And here I am, this suburban average white boy, right? Mixing with these people. Could tell you some interesting stories from that period as well, but try and stick to the point. Anyway, long story short, went to a rave one weekend and ended up staying there. I was awake for over 48 hours. Ended up getting pulled over, ended up getting arrested, ended up getting caught with a pharmacy in my car, and ended up having to call my parents and have them bail me out. It was a complete nightmare. They, I guess, had no idea that I was leading this double life, so it was a surprise to them. Had to move back in with them, went through this court-ordered program, eventually expunged my record. It was very tough 8 months of my life that I had to go through. It was awful. Anyway, eventually ended up moving back to LA. I was okay, the point is that after this I tried to join the Marines, right? I tried to join the Army, because the whole idea was that I would go through this court-ordered program that my lawyer arranged for me, and it would get the charges expunged from my record. So I was oh great, the charges are expunged. After this I can actually go join the Marines and do what I want to do with my life instead of living this fake college life that I don't really care about. Long story short, tried to do that. Marines wouldn't take me. Tried the Army after that. Army also wouldn't take me. So I was demoralized. I was all right, fine. At least I can go to LA and go to school and get rich. It's my plan. Move back to LA, get back into college. A couple of months go by. Temptation hits again. End up going to another rave. End up getting arrested again. end up having to call my parents again. And at this point I was like, all right, like this is pretty fucked up. Like now this is the second time this has happened. Like I think I have a problem, you know? Not like a drug problem, but like a stupid pattern in my mind problem is the way that I saw it. Like the drugs were fun, they were nice, but they weren't, I felt like I could stop, which is okay, fine. Every addict says that, right? But like I actually felt that I could. I was like, this is a pattern of my life choices that has caused me to like end up in this cell, staring up at the ceiling, like wondering about what's going to happen to me, if I'm gonna actually go to jail or prison or something. So anyway, I called my mom again, and she was surprisingly very understanding for some reason, and they bailed me out again, thankfully, and I went back to school, and this time, as far as I recall, like didn't go to any more raves. And while I was on campus, I was just wandering around in between classes, and I met I saw a rabbi on campus, like black hat, black jacket, very out of place, and he looked like he was just like standing around talking to people. And I was like, or like trying to stop people. And I was like, what the hell is, like, I knew he was Jewish, right? I was like, what the hell is this guy doing, like on campus? Like, who's he looking for, you know? Like, what is he looking for? So I just kind of like walk by him slowly and like look at him, and he looks at me, and he says to me, he's like, are you Jewish? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, cool, we're a new Chabad house. Our first Shabbat meal is tonight. Would you like to come? I'm like, okay, sure, why not? So it's Friday night. Shabbat, for those you don't know, is Friday night, Saturday night. It's like the holy day of the week, blah, blah, blah. So that night, I decide to go. Like, I don't have anything better to do. Like, home-cooked meal, why not? Never been to a Chabad Shabbat dinner. No idea really what to expect. I thought we were just going to go eat. So anyway, I go there, and shit, I'm not muted, am I? No, okay. I go there, and like I walk in the door, and I like walk through the house. There's apparently nobody there, and I find like some room, and there's like 4 guys, and they're all like doing like, it's called davening, right? I didn't know it was called davening at the time, but they have like the prayer book, and they're doing their like rocking back and forth, like, and I'm totally out of place. Like raised Jewish, fine, but no real like religious background at all. Could not read a word of Hebrew. Like knew nothing about. I mean, I knew like a little bit about Judaism, whatever, but like no customs, no prayers, like nothing. So anyway, I go there, and they hand me a prayer book, and I'm like, okay, and I pretend to look at it. Clearly out of place. Everyone can tell that I'm clearly out of place. And I'm sure they're thinking to themselves, like, is this guy even Jewish? Like, what is he doing here? Like, why did he wander into this house? So anyway, they ended up praying for like 40 minutes, and I'm standing there like, I feel so awkward, and I want to leave so badly, but I don't, because I don't want to be rude. So I end up staying, and after they pray, like we go into the dining room, we sit down, start talking, gets to be like a little bit more normal in terms of like your average human interaction. And then like there's all these other prayers, all these other customs, like you have to wash your hands, and you have to do a prayer for the bread, and after you wash your hands, you're not supposed to talk. I didn't know that, so I'm like making conversation with people, nobody's talking to me, I don't understand why. It's super awkward for me. Everyone knows it's awkward. It's like painfully awkward, like Seinfeld level of awkward, right? And anyway, as the dinner goes on, we finally start to eat, and like it becomes more normal. The wife of the rabbi, she like broaches the question. She's like, you know, this is a new Chabad house. It's our first day here. What are you guys expecting? Like, how can we, like, what do you guys expect? Like, what, not what do you expect, like, what do you expect? But like, what would you like to see, kind of? So I volunteered my information and my opinion. I was like, it's funny now that I think about it, but like, I was like, yeah, you know, all this prayer stuff is cool and everything, but like maybe some more like stuff for your average like casual Jew, you know, that's like not religion based. And like you say that to a religious person, they're gonna think like, well, do you understand that the point is to do all the prayer and stuff? But Chabad at least is very, they try to be very inclusive of secular Jews. That's like their whole thing. I didn't really notice at the time. Anyway, long story short, the rest of the dinner was pleasurable. I had fun. I actually enjoyed myself. And I went back the next week. The next week, there were about 25 people there, guys and girls, lots of students. And I got there late this time on purpose, so I would miss the like 40 minutes of prayer, not really understanding what I was doing. So I got there late on purpose. I ended up getting there like right when everyone had sat down for food. There was only one seat left at the table. So I go and I sit down at that seat. I say hi to like the 3 people who I'd met from last week. And the guy next to me starts talking to me. And I remember, I'll never forget what he says. he's like, he like introduced himself and he made some comment. He says like, he's like, you're the type of person that people need to watch out for, or something like that, or like you're like the dangerous type of person that people need to watch out for. But he like said it with a smile, and I like look at him, I'm like, oh really? And he's like, yeah man, I was in the military, I was a sergeant, I know people, I know how to like analyze personalities. And I was like, interesting, who's this interesting person who I sat next to? Anyway, we ended up talking the entire time, right? And this was a guy who's from New York, American, ended up moving to Israel, joining the army. He did 3 years in a special unit. And I was just asking him questions about the military the entire time. The whole time. I was like, tell me more. Like, what did you do? How was it? And the guy told me straight up. He wasn't like, it was great, I loved it, it was amazing. He was like, the army is shit. You're going to fucking hate it if you go. Like, well, he didn't say you're going to hate it, but I expressed interest that I wanted to go. Right? I even remember in the beginning of our conversation, he was like, oh yeah, like, he told me what he had done. And I was like, man, I wish I could do that, you know? And he's like, you can. Just call the Jewish Agency, who was the organization that handled what's called making Aliyah, or moving to Israel. They handled that back then. Now I believe it's Nefesh B'Nefesh, or maybe some other organization, I'm not sure. He's like, just call them and tell them you want to move to Israel, and then when you get there, just, you know, they'll call you for the army and you'll go. Like, you don't have a choice. And I was like, really? It's that easy? And he's like, yeah. And then I told him, I was like, well, you know, I committed some crimes. What if they find out? And he's like, bro, they're not going to find out. What, you think they're going to check? Like Shlomo from like the Israeli army is going to like, what, like call the state penitentiary board in California and be like, oh, we have an individual here, like blah, blah, blah. Did he commit any crime? Like, you think they're going to go through all that bureaucracy? And I was like, huh, he's right. And he's like, just keep your mouth shut about it. Don't say anything. It's like, okay. And like, I started to think in my mind, I was like, this could actually work. I can still satisfy my desire to join the military. Okay, it's not the American military, but I'm Jewish and I can apply to be a citizen of this other country that has a military. So cool, like awesome. And I literally just took the idea and ran with it, right? I called the Jewish Agency like that Monday. I called them that Monday and I told them, I was like, I want to like talk about moving to Israel, what do I do? And they're like, oh, we'll set an appointment for you, blah, blah, blah. Set an appointment. They had me gather like all this paperwork. Like you had to get all this stuff, whatever, which also, interestingly enough, included a letter from a rabbi stating that you were Jewish. It's a whole nother story, but like, anyway, I had to get this letter, got all my documents, took them down there. They approved my file. I was so worried my file wouldn't get approved. I was like, oh no, what if they do a background check on me and they see that I've been arrested? Meanwhile, of course, I know now that like Israel is like desperate for people. They want like every Jew in the world to move there. For reasons I can go into in another video, but like, I had nothing to worry about. It's like applying to be like the next affiliate of like Herbalife. Like they're not going to tell you no, you know what I mean? So anyway, I moved to Israel. Long story short, I ended up moving there 3 months later, like actually like 3 months later. I think I had my appointment with the Jewish Agency in like February and I made Aliyah in May, right? I moved there in May 31st, by the way, 2006, 13 years ago. Moved to a kibbutz. They found me an ulpan, right? Which is like Hebrew classes, basically. And when I got there, I told everybody that I was going to join the army. I was like, that's why I'm here. I'm going to join the army. And they see it as a very respectable thing over there for somebody from a foreign country to move to Israel specifically to do the army. Because they think to themselves, we're Israeli, we have to go. But you live in a country where you have so much more opportunity, you could do whatever you want, yet you're choosing to come here and serve. And I would even tell them, look, like, I'm not doing it because I love Israel or I love being Jewish, I don't want to protect the Jewish people. I'm doing it for selfish reasons. And they were like, you know what? It doesn't even matter. Like every single person that I would say that to was like, it does not matter why you're here. The fact is that you are here and you are donating your time and you're serving. And I was like, wow, like these people actually don't care about my motivations for doing it. It was so, it's very reassuring, right? To know that they actually don't care why you're doing it. They just care that you did it. So I don't know, I thought that was weird. Anyway, I could keep talking about this subject indefinitely. Like, I have lots of stories to tell about it, but this video is why I chose to move to Israel and join the IDF, or Israeli Defense Force, whatever I end up titling this. And I just wanted to share that in a 20-ish minute video format, because I feel like that's something that people have asked me before. And now you know why. So, in summary, always wanted to join the military, got into some trouble, wasn't able to actually join the American military, randomly ended up sitting next to somebody who told me that I could join the Israeli army, ran with the idea, and did it, and here I am. Cool. So if you guys want to hear any other stories about maybe like, I don't know, some military stories perhaps, it has been a while since I've gotten out. However, you know, a lot of those experiences have been burned into my memory. I'll be happy to tell them. If you guys have any specific ideas, or if you just want to hear more like general stuff, like whatever I want to tell, I'm happy to do that as well. Let me know, leave me a comment. Peace.